I am, Jerry. Okay, I'll get started. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Zoom webinar today to celebrate the upcoming Mental Health Awareness Month in May. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Zoom webinar event. It's called Sowing Seeds of Resilience with the Recovering Farmer, featuring our special guest, Gerry Friesen. My name's Karen Marcinkiw, and I'm a registered nurse for the Canadian Centre for Rural and Agricultural Health in the Extension Division of the Agricultural Health and Safety Network. I grew up on a mixed farm in southwest Saskatchewan. The Ag Health and Safety Network is a unique program focusing on providing farm families with farm safety and rural health information, health screening services, education, and training. The ultimate goal of the network is to reduce injury and illness related to agricultural production. This event is brought to you by the Canadian Centre for Rural and Agricultural Health, also our Ag Health and Safety Network, and we are partnering with a great organization today as well, and it's called SaskAgMatters Mental Health Network. As we gather here today, I acknowledge that I live and work on Territory 6, or on Treaty 6, territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. We are excited to offer this webinar today featuring Gerry Friesen, who shares his mental health journey in farming and provides strategies for building resilience. He will chat with us about pieces of his book, The Recovering Farmer. And I've got that right here today. There you'll see it. And his story and message is one of difficulties, determination, and hope. By caring for our mental health, we can improve our overall wellness and contribute to a stronger and healthier farming community. Let's hear about Gerry and his story. But first, let me do a short introduction. Gerry, aka the Recovering Farmer, is the co-founder of the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program. He comes from a diverse background of experience, learning, and discovery through farming and as a stress and conflict management specialist. Gerry's passion is in helping others find solutions for the various issues that life throws at us. A combination of his own journey with anxiety and depression, training in conflict resolution, and intensive counseling training provide him the tools to help others who are struggling. Gerry has written a book called The Recovering Farmer, which is a memoir of his mental health journey. Today, I will chat with him about his mental health journey in farming and tips to help manage stress and build resilience in agriculture while linking in pieces of his book. Welcome, Gerry.
Thanks a lot, Karen. Looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll get started, Gerry. So our Agricultural Health and Safety Network was able to interview you last fall, and it resulted in a feature article being published in our network news about you and your new book, The Recovering Farmer. And today we're lucky to have you back for a conversation in celebration of the upcoming May Mental Health Awareness Month. As was stated in our network news article, Gerry is passionate about facing and reducing the stigma of mental illness head on to help other farmers to overcome the stigma and seek help and support. I am chatting with Gerry today to find out ways our ag community can sow seeds of resilience, for mental health to weather the storms of uncertainty, unpredictability, and ups and downs, and to remember the positives and that there is hope and support. Let's remind ourselves that mental health is just as important as physical health. So to start our conversation today, Gerry, can you tell us a bit about your agricultural background and then also what brought you here today to want to speak to agricultural producers and families about mental health?
All right, Karen, thanks again for having me. And you may have to remind me about the second half of your question because
Sure.
by the time I'm done talking, I will have forgotten about it.
No
I grew
problem.
I grew up on a grain and poultry farm in southwestern Manitoba. Never had any real thoughts about going into farming myself, but somehow at the end of the day, I did. So I basically got into farming. My brother and I took over the family farm. We had to build a hog barn to diversify because we both didn't like grain farming. So we did build a hog barn. So I did the farming thing in the 90s. I sometimes say that I was involved in agricultural politics. I was involved with Manitoba Pork Council, the Keystone Agricultural Producers. And then in 2000, I was appointed to the Manitoba Farm Mediation Board, where I quickly learned that perhaps the mediation work is something I had some natural ability to do. So I did some training in that and ultimately started my own business as the farm was winding down. We had made some decisions in our farming career, which farmers do. They have to make a lot of decisions. And we had made a decision at the time that supply management perhaps wasn't that stable because it was always under scrutiny. So we expanded the hog operation, and the hog industry actually became a very volatile industry to be part of. And so we had some significant challenges there. So as that was happening, I really started my own mediation business. While I was still farming, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and I know we'll probably get into that a little bit later. But as the farm was winding down, I got involved with the Manitoba Farm and Rural Stress Line, and that's where I really started learning more about mental health in general, but in particular about my own mental health. And and I was able to start connecting dots, and I was able to learn, and I was able to grow in that. And that's where my passion arose. And this leads to the second part of your question, of course, is since 2007, which I didn't realize till I thought about it before, is almost 20 years ago, which is in another lifetime entirely. But and then in 2010, I started talking publicly about my own story, and just that has grown. And I guess, long story short, as a result of that, I ended up writing a book. People ask me why. I still have no idea why. It just kind of happened. And here I am, and just absolutely love. I guess what I really like, Karen, is the fact that which I had never dreamt could happen, is that my story resonates with others. And so something I often say is I tell my story not because it's unique, but because it isn't. In essence, there's a lot of mental health challenges out there, and I want to be part of that group of people, and it involves a lot of us. Um, be part of that group that reduces that stigma to make sure that people have that comfort level to reach out.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. So talking more about your mental health journey and your farming life, when, Gerry, did you first realize your mental health was declining? Like, what signs or symptoms did you notice?
Well, and it happened actually kind of in 2004. And the story is I was dealing with another farm couple in farm mediation together with a colleague. And suddenly I felt my heart do some strange palpitations. I felt very lightheaded. I was convinced I was going to pass out. I thought I was having a heart attack, and it passed relatively quickly. But then started happening more frequently till to the point where I went to see a doctor a few months after that, and of course got the diagnosis and was put on medication. But as I connected dots through, after I started connecting dots, I came to understand that my mental health challenges had started much earlier than that. In fact, I can trace it back to when I was a kid, when I was a young teenager even. But really, I then also realized that in the 90s, as I was facing the challenges at the farm, as I was dealing with my off farm work, that was getting to me, and I used alcohol time at the time to cope. And so now when I look back, I of course understand that already in the 90s, I was having some fairly significant mental health challenges, but didn't recognize it as such at the time. And even if I did recognize it, I was loath to reach out for help because, of course, I'm a man. I grew up in a culture where that meant I wasn't working hard enough, my faith wasn't strong enough, I wasn't praying enough. And so that's how I dealt with it through a coping mechanism that obviously led to bigger problems.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. How has your mental health journey affected your family, would you say?
Wow. And you know what? They should all be here talking to you and answering that question. Uh, I wrote in the book, Karen, and when I started talking about it publicly, my journey, I thought I should talk to my wife and my kids to see how it affected them.
Yeah.
My wife told me that she felt like she had been married to four different men. I said to her she was lucky I had been married to the same woman. That at the time didn't go across very well, but so in essence, what she was saying is, yes, we got married, things were good. I got involved with farming, and then my mental health stuff hit, and I wasn't a pleasant person to be married to, quite frankly, because when you're lost in that mental health, um, in that mental illness, it has a great impact on great as in huge impact on relationships. And so I thought at the time I had been hiding it from my kids. They were, well, back then they were in their teens. Um, I found out later that they had been well aware of what was going on. They talk about crying themselves to sleep. They talked about, wow, sorry, that hit me. Oh,
That's okay.
uh, and so the impact, again, really the impact is great,
It's okay.
is big, it's huge on families. And so that's something that I had to really become aware of.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gerry. I know this might be difficult, some of this conversation. And um, did you have an actual point where you decided I have to do something about this, or was it sort of gradual? I need to find help, you know?
When I went to see the doctor in 2004, and he put me on medication, I, I think I was naive, maybe isn't the right word, but certainly didn't understand the implications of what I was experiencing. And so I went on medication and thought, well, okay, I'm going to slowly get better, which didn't happen. And then through time, I've had numerous family doctors, not because I didn't like one, just because of doctors quit or we moved or whatever the case may be. But I've also seen a host of other mental health professionals. Nothing ever seemed to work. And I was quite discouraged with that. Um, I was, and sometimes, quite frankly, I was doing this again to placate the family, right? And it's now 7 years ago when I was again going down a slope I shouldn't go down, that my wife and kids told me, okay, Dad, it's time to go seek help. And I go, well, who do I go see? I've seen them all. And they suggested a naturopath, which I did go see her. She had a specialty in mental health. I wasn't very enthused about that appointment, quite frankly, because what I thought would happen is I'd be put on some sort of diet. And of course, I'm a hardcore Mennonite, as it were, when it comes to food, and I like my basics. And so anything outside of that didn't appeal to me. But for the first time, finally, after all the other professionals I had seen, for the first time ever, someone connected dots for me. And they didn't fix me that day, but just through learning how those dots all connected, in fact, going back to when I was a teenager, just gave me a level of comfort or a sense of comfort. And in fact, when I got home that day from that appointment, my wife said, that's the first time you've ever come home from an appointment with a smile on your face. And so that was just that indication that maybe there were things that were starting to work out. And so I've had to learn to deal with it through various ways.
Okay, great. So it kind of, for farmers out there looking for help, it might take some different avenues to try before something might work for them, and it could be different things, couldn't it?
Absolutely, Karen. And the beauty of all of this is the resources we now have. I mean, the work that the center does, the work that's being done in the different provinces with farmer wellness programs, the resources that are available. Um, we often talk about the importance of professional having a background in agriculture, and I've heard anecdotal stories about that, and they're actually, if they weren't so sad, they'd be hilarious. I experienced that myself with a psychologist, and who didn't understand financial issues on a farm. He didn't understand that whole farming concept, and so at the end of the appointment, he told me that I couldn't afford him. I should go back on medication. Well, that just hit me again, just thinking that it was a hopeless case, right? But now that we have these resources here, it's so much, it's so easy. It's so easy to get the help that's needed.
Wonderful. What other realizations would you say about mental wellness have you discovered along the way that might help other farmers who are watching? So,
Well, I think the awareness piece, and I can't stress that enough, Karen, is that people need to be aware of what's going on. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and we have a stiff neck or a sore back, and we can't figure out what that was. I know now it's because I'm old, and that's why. That's just simply what the reality of. But it's interesting how stress impacts us. And so we have to be aware of that physically, emotionally, mentally. We become more irritable, or we use the wrong methods of coping, like I did with alcohol, and our behaviors change, and there's a risk to our own safety. And I think the key to all of this is the fact that, in fact, Farm Management Canada did a study on this in 2017, I believe, where it showed what impacts stress, and by extension, things like anxiety and depression, what kind of impact they have on farm business management. And so that's where that awareness piece is key, because not only does it help us, if we seek help for that, does it help us personally, but it also helps us in our farm business management.
okay, yeah. We know, Gerry, that mental health and physical health are both equally important. And physical health is easily discussed. We talk about that and our physical aches and pains and diseases and things like that. But there's still often a stigma about talking about mental health, especially in the rural areas. What can we do to continue to increase mental health awareness and decrease the stigma?
Well, number one is we have to normalize it. We have to understand that this is normal. And if nothing else normalizes it, the surveys that the University of Guelph has done over the years, one in 2016, one in 2021, how many farmers out there are experiencing high levels of stress? How many farmers and families out there, family members would meet the criteria for an anxiety classification or for a depression classification? Like, just seeing numbers like that, and to me, they're alarming because I recognize what's going on. But for others, they should see that as an indication and these are the 3 points I make, Karen, is number one, you are not alone. Um, Number two is it's more than okay to reach out for help. And number three is there's hope and relief. And so if we keep that in mind, I hope through that we can provide a level of comfort for those who are hesitant, that they have a level of comfort in being able to reach out.
Gerry, you decided to write a book, and here it is, The Recovering Farmer, A Journey Through the Labyrinth of Anxiety and Depression. Why should our farmers and ranchers read it?
Because I need to sell more books. You know what? Again, Karen, I don't tell my story because it's unique. So anybody that's going to read the story isn't, I don't think is going to say, well, yeah, so what, right? I tell it because it's not unique. I tell it because I want people to have that level of comfort in being able to understand the fact that, ooh, and it's best described, and I've done a lot of farm debt mediation in the last 25 years. And a number of years ago, I was sitting at a kitchen table with another farm family, and he pulled out a letter he had received from the credit union. And he was quite emotional when he read it to me and talked about, or the letter said that the credit union was set to proceed with legal action to realize on their security. In other words, they were going to foreclose or collect on their security. And when he was done reading it, he looked up at me and I said, you know what? When I got a letter like that, this is what I did. And his mouth literally dropped open and he said, you know what I'm going through? And I said, yes, I absolutely do. And so that opened the door to have a conversation about what the options were.
Mhm.
And I think with my book, it's the same thing. It's when people will read it, they'll go, oh, someone else is experiencing the same thing I am. And so again, going back to what I said before, I want people to know they're not alone. I want people to understand the fact that there is hope and relief. I want people to have a level of comfort in reaching out to get the help that they need.
Wonderful. In your book, you talk about naming the beast and taming the beast. Can you share more about these?
Yes, I can. Uh, uh, as I did for myself, in learning about my mental illness, is I had to recognize that first and foremost, recognize that I did have a mental illness. And that's what I mean in naming the beast and not shying away from the fact that, yes, I have anxiety. Yes, I have depression. If we don't do that, we're ignoring the issue and we're never gonna get the help we need for that. And so that's why I think it's important in naming the beast. But then I talk about taming the beast. And again, my experience isn't the same as everybody else's. Everybody has a different journey they're on. But and there's those that seek help for their mental illness and are able to get over it and boom, they're they can move on in life. While others, and I fall into this category, I've never seen anybody use a magic wand on me to make everything disappear and now I'm happy and so I talk about taming the beast because that in essence with my stress management techniques I use, and I outline a lot of them in the book, a lot of those are ways of taming that beast. So I know that I have anxiety, I know that I have depression, but by using all these tools, I can tame that beast.
So maybe kind of leading into that, you were talking about some stress management techniques you use. Would you like to share any of those ideas with people today?
Well, there's a fairly long list, and on a regular basis, I'm learning more, Karen. Um, but again, just in reference to that is this winter, and there's another chapter I could add to the book, and someday I might send it out. It's been written because I tried something different this winter and it didn't work. Um, but that's a whole nother story. But when I went to see the naturopath that I see, she made the comment to me one day. She said, Gerry, there isn't one thing that will fix you. Rather, it's a whole list of smaller things that the culmination of all of them. And so, you know what, in the winter time, yeah, we were talking about this before we started. I'm an avid golfer and I'm looking out my window and going, just a couple of more days and I can be out there. But during the winter, I use a sad lamp or a happy lamp, call it what you may. It's for seasonal affective disorder. Um, I need to be diligent with using a treadmill during the winter. Exercise helps for me in three different ways. Number one is it releases endorphins. Number two is I have a lung issue from working in a hog barn. And number three is there's something else now I can't remember. My mind's gone blank. But I have to be diligent in using a treadmill. Um, I listening to music. We talked about this before too, Karen. Is I will often, and I don't drive as much as I used to. That changed because of COVID, and so a lot more of my work is being done virtually. But I often I'm driving down the highway and suddenly realize I'm just totally zoned out, thinking about something again that isn't benefiting my life at all. And when I switch on the radio and listen to some music, that's helpful. My naturopath told me the last time I saw her, she says, you need to start listening to music more in your home when you're working in your office. And I do that, and it's helpful. Um, I have human connection is incredibly important. Um, and of course, during COVID, we found out what isolation is really all about. That human connection is important. That's another reason I like to golf because of that human connection. I play music, not nearly often enough. I play guitar and harmonica, and I should do that more often. There's all of these things that if you do them all, you're going to find out you're a much healthier, mentally healthier person.
For sure. Um, I was just thinking, I think a cool feature in your book is at the end of every chapter, you finish with a takeaway. It's a little section you have called a takeaway. Can you tell us more about your intent with the takeaway portions of of each chapter?
I did that. I had written my book, Karen, and one of my sons was very helpful in editing it. And one day he says, Dad, you need to for each chapter write something at the end which is a little more generic than so specific about you. And at the first my first at first blush, I just said, no, I'm not doing that. I've written my book. I'm done. But regardless, I started thinking about it. And really what it does, again, I said before, Karen, that we're all on a journey, and all of those journeys probably differ somewhat. And so just because I say that this helped me doesn't mean it might help someone else. So at the end of the chapter, I, do a takeaway on broader, perhaps stress management tricks about, conflict, families farming together, um, spirituality and meditation, coping methods, all of these different things, just in a more generic sense. So at the end of the day, and this goes back to when I first started writing my book, um, I someone had said, "Well, there's lots of good stories you can share about your farming days." Well, there were stories. Someone said that it can be a memoir. You called it a memoir at the outset. Others said it could be a self-help book of some sort. And so it felt like I had to choose which one I should write. And then someone said, well, it can be all three. And that's when I had an aha moment. And that's why the book is structured the way it is.
I love that. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so Gerry, as we know, farming and ranching continue to be such challenging professions. What key pieces of wisdom would you like to share for those who may be going through a tough mental health journey right now?
I would suggest to them that they should talk about it, verbalize it. I'm a big proponent of talking about things. And as I've experienced, Karen, when we fold within ourselves, and I'm not sure if that's the right way of putting it, but if we're not releasing a lot of the things we think about, they're just in our mind and they're churning around in there. And so I always say that when we verbalize what's going on in our head, it's interesting, even just verbalizing it, you can yourself start realizing what's real and what's perceived.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite all-time stories is is in 2005, I had a significant life event, as it were. Um, I had gone off medication actually a few months prior to this, and then this happened, and suddenly all the work on the farm was thrust on my shoulders, and it just really pushed me over the edge. And 2 days after that happened, my neighbor showed up. Um, and he looked at me, and I guess he could tell I wasn't in a good place. And so he asked me how I was doing. And you know how we often, when it doesn't matter how we're doing, we'll say, well, I'm fine, plugging along, another day in paradise, whatever that response may be. But that morning, for some strange reason, I started talking. And for an hour, he sat there, he listened to me, he normalized and validated what I was feeling. He didn't provide any answers, but rather he was that safe listening ear which I needed that morning. And in fact, and again, like I say, when I was verbalizing the stuff to him, I myself could start recognizing some of the stuff that just didn't even make sense that I was thinking them. But what that did is verbalizing it and suddenly gave me the encouragement to seek even further help. And that's when I did go see another therapist. And so it's when we start verbalizing this stuff is so helpful. And I would challenge farmers to do that. Um, I know that in the last few months, this whole tariff thing, for example, has really created stress. And I get it because there's so much uncertainty, right? And so there's so many things, and it seems like on an annual basis, on a daily basis, perhaps, there's more and more things outside the control of our farmers. And it's these things that are outside of our control that really have this ability to push us towards that edge. And so we have to learn to manage that. And the best way to do that is to talk to someone who can help you, who can give you those steps, who can help you recognize it, who can help you be more diligent about using proper coping methods, someone who can help you in being able to withstand these bigger stressors that keep coming along. Okay, I just said a whole bunch of stuff. Did I actually answer your
You
question?
did. Yeah, you sure
Okay.
did. And so we want people to talk about it. And so we are having farmers and ranchers watch this today. Are there specific people you think they should reach out to? Do you have some ideas? I know Katie's putting some things here in our chat about resources that people can reach out to. I will talk a little bit more after we talk about a resource called SaskAgMatters Mental Health Network. So we'll talk about that a little bit more after. Yeah, what are your suggestions, Gerry? Like, who should they reach out to if they want to talk about?
Well, and you know what? It can be a friend, it can be a neighbor, it can be a family member. Pick someone. If stuff you want to talk about is something you don't want to talk to about to someone that you know well, then go outside that circle. And again, I know Saskatchewan has a similar program to what we have in Manitoba. We have the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program, and it's so simple, it's so confidential, it's so free, as it were. So people can take advantage of this, and it's so simple to get that help, and so we have to make sure that people are aware of these resources. And there's other resources. We have Dumorag, which is headquartered, is stationed in Saskatchewan, who provide great resources. They have a few different ones that the ag culture that people can that professionals can understand agriculture better. They have that talk, ask, listen, I believe it's called, um, where people can take these workshops and understand the mental well-being challenges in agriculture. And so take advantage of all the resources that are out there. And again, the third one is, and I've said this a number of times and I'll say it again, is you're not alone. And there's absolutely no shame in reaching out. And people sometimes think, well, it's a weakness if I have to reach out. No, in fact, it's strength. It's strong. You're being strong if you reach out.
Amazing, Gerry. Yes. How can we support a family member or community member who we think could benefit from some mental health support, but they aren't willing to seek support or help? What would you suggest in that?
That's an incredibly difficult question to answer, Karen, because people who are struggling very often kick back against anybody that's there to help, right? Um, sometimes it works to be forced. I heard from one of our counselors shared that she had seen a gentleman and the guy had said, my wife told me I either had a choice, either go seek help or she was leaving. Um, Thankfully, he chose to go seek help. And after the first appointment, he made another one because he realized, wow, this is helpful. So occasionally it works to push someone. Other than that, what you can do is do like my neighbor did. Uh, Go sit down with someone that you think is struggling. Don't sit there and tell them they need a kick in the butt or anything. Rather, just be there and say, hey, listen, I see you're struggling. I'm here for you. If they choose to talk, great. If they choose not to talk at that point, you're still there and providing the support that they need.
I had written down a few notes from your book, and I thought this is sort of a fitting quote that you had said that we can do. So take the time to listen. The beauty of that is you don't need to provide any answers. All you need to do is show some interest, be curious, normalize, validate, and understand whatever way you can. That is all many of us need.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And if I were to write that paragraph again, I would add another one. Listen without judgment. Turn
Yes.
judgment to curiosity.
Yeah. I know be curious, not judgmental. That was one of the things if you've ever seen Ted Lasso,
Yeah, oh,
he says
exactly.
that too.
Yes.
Okay, Gerry, I don't want to get sidetracked but on that, but how can we support a rural family member or neighbor who isn't able to access mental health supports, like due to a variety of situations? Maybe there's waiting lists, remote locations, not knowing where or how to access support.
Well, again, and I know that there are still things that impede getting the help. I also know, and I believe Saskatchewan's program does the same thing. Certainly in Manitoba, you can get this counseling by telephone, virtually, or in person. So if you have a telephone that works, do that. If I know that internet in some rural areas is still questionable, but if you've got good internet, do it that way. It is now possible. Um, the waiting period thing is, I know, has been a challenge. We do with our program here, we tell clients that want to take part in this program is that our counselors can normally get them in within 2 weeks. Um, Once they can't do that anymore, then we have to add more counselors. Like we're keeping our finger on the pulse because that waiting time can be a killer. And just to give you an example, as the first summer we were in operation, I got an email on a Saturday morning from a woman who was desperately looking for help for her husband. They had tried in the public health system, they just weren't able to get anything. It was supposed to be a 3 month waiting period. And I was able to get her connected with a counselor by Sunday evening. And so the waiting time isn't an issue anymore as far as getting that help that's needed.
And I will mention some resources here once we're finished our
Yeah.
discussion that people can reach out to as well. While we're, I guess, just before our question period, I want everyone to stay on for our question and answer period, but we're going to do a last question to you, Gerry, before that time. Um, After this last question, then I'm going to just show a few slides and then we'll get right into our Q&A session. But this is my last question for you, Gerry. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share about the importance of mental well-being for our agricultural producers?
I'm going to go back, and I said this once, and I maybe said it twice, and maybe 3 times, but it's really important, so I'm going to say it again. Number one is you are not alone. Number two is it's more than okay to reach out for help. And number three is there is hope and there is relief.
powerful and just a perfect way to end, Gerry. So hang on, everybody. Stay tuned. I want to, on behalf of Canadian Centre for Rural and Agricultural Health, Agricultural Health and Safety Network, and our SaskAgMatters Mental Health Network. A big thank you to you, Gerry, for speaking with us today about your mental health journey in farming, tips to build resilience, and a message of hope. Huge thanks to all of our attendees, including ag producers and ag supporters. We understand that with farming and ranching, there are just so many stressors that are simply out of your control, and your strength, your resiliency, and perseverance are admirable, and you are our backbone in Saskatchewan to producing, and in Canada to producing high quality food for the world. So thank you for taking the time to invest in your health today, in learning more about protecting and improving your mental health. And please know you're not alone, and there is hope and help.